Good evening, everyone. My name is Gyan Pambani, and I am the host of the Entrepreneurship Insights Podcast. Today, our guest is Paige Brown. She's a co founder and CEO of WindBorne Systems, a weather startup that aims to launch constellations of long duration balloons to blanket the Earth in sensors to eliminate environmental uncertainty, improve forecasts, and help humanity adapt to climate change. Paige began her journey as an environmental engineer. In high school, she developed a low-cost material capable of absorbing nutrient pollution from fresh water. She won the Intel Science Talent Search in 2016. After studying at Stanford, she worked in materials engineering at Lockheed Martin on stealth materials and at SpaceX on their Starlink satellites and Mars development. While at Stanford, she led the Stanford Student Space Initiative High Altitude Balloon team and managed the project, which eventually became the technology behind Windborne. It's a pleasure having you on the podcast today, Paige.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you too.
Yes, definitely. So, could you give us a background? How did you discover entrepreneurship and how did you first start taking advantage of your passions?
Sure. When I first started out, I had no idea that I was planning to go into entrepreneurship. I originally just wanted to do what I enjoyed doing, which was engineering and managing a team. And when I got to Stanford, I joined the high altitude balloon team and started getting involved with this balloon project that creating balloons that could fly for as long as possible. And I worked on that for a couple of years, and it was only when we got towards the end of of my time at Stanford that we started thinking about what is the point of what we are doing? What can we do with this? What is the greater impact that we can create from the technology we've developed? And this is usually kind of a backward way of thinking about tech of a starting a company, because usually you start with a problem and you develop technology to meet that problem. But sometimes when you have kind of deeper technology that is feeding into a potential solution for a problem, you have to start with the technology. It has to start as basic research, and there has to be a transition into actually solving a problem that affects people's lives. And so that was the route for us. We realized we want to have an impact, and the vehicle for having that impact is entrepreneurship. So that's why we ended up going into entrepreneurship.
That's absolutely amazing. You discovered entrepreneurship as a way uh, to maximize your impact. And so you said who worked with you while you made that transition, and how did I'm assuming your team help you achieve whatever you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I was working with a team of four other people who were all engineers working on this technology. And some of them were working on the technology even before I joined the team. And together, all five of us became the co-founders of the company. And it was really because of this team that I started working on this project. I was passionate about balloons, but more importantly, I was passionate about working with people who were very smart, people who were smarter than I was. And I wanted to learn from these people, and I wanted to challenge myself through this, through getting in touch with these people and through working with them. And it's been a continual pleasure to work with them through starting a company. And I find that by working with them, I'm learning more than I would working alone.
Yeah, that having a strong team and, like you said, surrounding yourself with smart people is important, especially in entrepreneurship. Uh, so you can all grow. And so, what do you enjoy most about this type of lifestyle that you have?
Yeah, so there's kind of three things that really appeal to me about entrepreneurship now that I've had a chance to experience it. And one is the level of control I have over the work I do on a day-to-day basis. I don't have someone telling me what to do. And that is a plus and a minus, because sometimes it's difficult to understand how to approach problems, but it does mean that I have a high degree of control over what I do and a lot of flexibility there. The second thing is that there's a massive potential for learning. I've been able to learn something new every day pretty much for years, for the past couple of years. And I'm constantly challenging myself to develop and to grow and to take on new skills that I never thought that I would have to do. Working with the FAA, for example, combing through legal documents, figuring out HR, taxes, insurance. It's all sort of mundane stuff, but it's still interesting and useful to learn these things. And the last thing is that the potential for impact. Working through entrepreneurship, I have a much greater potential for impact than if I were an individual contributor somewhere. And that really appeals to me because I feel like that's a core value that I use to drive my life forward. Is I want to be able to create a better world for my future children and for future generations. And I believe that this is my path to doing that is through entrepreneurship.
Well, that's a flattering that's a flattering response, you know. Like you value making an impact on the world and you think of it as a core value, and that's extremely important. And so knowing what you do now, would you do anything differently, start earlier, or change anything while starting out?
Yes, I think that I would have worked at a startup before starting my own company. I think it would have been useful to be the first, second, or third employee, even an intern at a startup early on, to kind of see how things worked, understand what potential pitfalls there are, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's come up where I wish that I had seen this before. I wish that I had just a conception of how other companies did this. I didn't have much experience coming in and trying to do this.
Yeah, so just having experience, right? And you can never have enough of it, right? So now let's shift over to your ventures. So in high school, you invented a technology that absorbs nutrient pollution from soft water. So then how did that come about, and how did this event and the later prize help you discover your passions or lead to another event that may have?
Yeah, so I guess this started in my high school chemistry class. Um, I was learning about phosphorus. I was learning about the impacts that phosphorus has on freshwater and saltwater systems, where phosphorus enters a water system and causes the growth of harmful algal blooms. And thinking back to the where I used to spend my time, I used to love playing in the streams near my home, and I took some water samples from those areas and brought them into class to test them, and was shocked to find that they were much higher levels of phosphorus than I'd expected. In fact, they were starting to get into the ranges where harmful algal blooms could start to form. So I decided to start investigating that, start to figure out what levels of phosphorus there were and what levels of other pollutants in the streams around my home. And I discovered that there was a phosphorus impairment issue there. And so that's when I decided to do something about that and to develop a technology to remove that phosphate pollution and try to prevent harmful algal blooms, both in the streams around my home and in potentially worldwide for these applications. And what this really led me to discover was my passion for the environment and eventually for climate change as well. I realized that water pollution is a critical issue for many, but an even bigger issue that is facing the world right now is climate change. And it is the most pressing and concerning problem, I believe, that is facing us at all right now in this world. And that really led me to what I'm doing at Windborn, because I realized that, this is a way for me to have an impact. We can help people adapt to climate change by giving them the tools to understand their weather risk and understand what decisions they need to be making on the basis of weather information.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that um, like that high school event was like a starting of like a snowball, and like as snowballs roll down hills, they grow in size, and this just kind of led up to what you do now at Windborn. And so after high school, you studied at Stanford and worked with many well-renowned scientists from SpaceX and Lockheed Martin. And how has your education helped shape your career and what you do now?
Mhm. So the most critical things that I learned in school were not calculus or like material science or anything. I studied material science in school, but I don't remember any of that stuff and I don't use any of that stuff. The things that I learned were how to learn, how to teach myself stuff. That is the most critical thing you can learn in college, is how to learn. And you can learn that at any point. You can learn that in high school too. Learn how to educate yourself through the resources that are available online and through, and through mentors that you can find. I learned how to think like a scientist. I think that's another critical part of my education. And the third part is that I learned to build relationships. And I think that that was a really positive part of being at Stanford, is that that's something that implicitly they try to teach you, that like this, it's all networking. Networking is, it's boring, and people diss it, but you it's all about building relationships. Everything that you do is built on relationships. And so learning how to build strong relationships through like mentor to mentee or collaborator to collaborator, or through customer and producer, all of these kind of relationships, building trust within them and understanding how to make these mutually beneficial. That's a really critical part that I learned about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I could not, yeah, and like just networking is absolutely important, right? And like it can work no matter how old you are, right? And like on LinkedIn, like how we met, and so it's really important, right? And to build strong relationships. And I read somewhere that like you only need one strong relationship for something to work out for you, right? And so you are the co-founder and CEO of Windborne Systems, a weather startup that aims to eliminate environmental uncertainty. And so could you go into a bit more detail? What service does it provide and what problem does it solve in our society?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the problem. So right now, the weather prediction system has pretty massive gaps in the way it functions. So the way that weather data comes into, it is assimilated. It comes from balloons and it comes from satellites. Those are kind of two of the most major sources. And the balloons are launched just on the land, and they do not cover the ocean. And the ocean is about 85% of the Earth's surface. There's also very sparse coverage over places like Africa and South America, where people can't afford to put in good weather infrastructure. And the same is true of ground stations, which are another critical source of data. So you've got a massive lack of in situ data. This is data that is in the atmosphere throughout all of the Earth's oceans, out throughout Africa, throughout South America. And weather's a global system. So what's happening in these places is affecting what's happening in the United States or in Europe or anywhere else that you're considering. And satellites are not filling this gap. Satellites have issues with accuracy, especially at the lowest levels of the atmosphere, in the places like the planetary boundary layer, which is the lowest 1 to 2 kilometers above the Earth's surface. It's hard to get this data. And so we fill those gaps. We launch balloons that go out into locations all around the world in the locations that most need data coverage, and fill the gaps. We take the data, we put it into weather forecasts, and we make the weather forecast better. And what we ultimately sell to people is decision-making capabilities. So analytics and insights on the basis of the weather forecast that we're producing, powered by this constellation of smart weather balloons.
Yeah, so the thing that comes straight to my head is a Starlink, but like a little closer to the Earth's surface. And so while founding a startup, co-founders go through some challenges. So could you describe some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Sure. Let me see. Some challenges that we faced. Well, it's always, I think the biggest challenge has been with hiring, finding the right people, because ultimately a startup is comprised of people, and in order to make the best startup possible, you need to have the best people. And very early on, we hired our first engineer, and he joined the team. And we realized over the first couple of months of him being on the team that he was not the right fit for our team, that he thought about things in a very, very different way, and had a number of issues with trust and that sort of stuff that was making it impossible for him to integrate into the team. And we had to make the very difficult decision to part ways with him. And that was, I think, one of the most difficult things that I've had to do as a founder is, have that conversation where it's like, no, things are not working out. And since then, we went back to the drawing board, and we had to search for a new engineer to fill the place of this person. And eventually we were able to find a person, and it took months and months and months, but we were able to find the right person. And she's been absolutely fantastic. So it's just a matter of, finding those people who are truly good fits, who are aligned with your mission, who are aligned with the company culture, and who are, positive people who are working together with you to build something great. And I think that was a huge learning experience for us about how careful we needed to be about hiring and who we brought into the team.
Yeah, that is a known difficulty. Like usually, like hiring people is like, oh, okay, it's like happens in a snap of a finger. But usually, like firing someone or parting ways is a little bit harder, right? Because of attachment. So how many people have you helped through Windborne, and currently, like how is it placed on the web? Like, is it a website, or how do I as a consumer use your service?
Yes, so Windborne is still in the beta stages. So we're running internal pilots and pilots with government customers, and then over the next couple of years, we're going to be moving towards enterprise sales customers. So moving towards working with people in the energy sector, in the shipping, in logistics sector, in the agriculture sector, in the insurance sector. So it's going to be a long time before we have a consumer-facing weather product, but it will be affecting kind of the unseen parts of society. So the inner workings of the people who are making your food, the people who are moving your stuff around, the people who are ensuring your schools or ensuring your homes. So it's kind of a background structure that it is helping.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear that, and I'd like to use such a service when I'm older. So how did you? I'm assuming Windborne must have started. When? Sorry, let me ask. When did you start actually committing time to the drawing board or to hiring people?
So Windborn, the idea that became Windborn started back in 2015. But since then, we spun out as a company in 2019. Started working on it early 2019, kind of January timeframe, and from there ended up hiring our first employee kind of mid 2020.
All right. So how did you balance Windborne with your other commitments that you have? Because uh, that's a big issue with entrepreneurship is being able to uh, give adequate time to everything that you have on your plate.
Yes. So early on, when I first started Windborn, it was at the same, yeah, it was while I was still in school. It was very difficult. I had about 3 months where I rarely got more than 5 hours of sleep a night, and it was very difficult. At that point, I was like, okay, that's it. I can't do this anymore, and I dropped out of school. And um, after that, it's been a lot easier to balance things. It's still been a huge commitment to, out of my life is it's a lot more than a regular job. That's one of the downsides of entrepreneurship, I suppose, is it's a lot more than your regular 9 to 5 job. But and I've learned over the course of the last couple of years how to balance that with my personal life and how to make sure that I'm still building, personal relationships and that I'm still taking care of myself and still, finding time to have fun from time to time, while still committing what needs to happen to making Windborn a reality.
That sounds amazing. Uh, even though you had to make the decision to drop out, that's what you had to do to achieve a balance, right? Um, and so, uh, what advice do you have for teens thinking about entering the science and entrepreneurship field, like who have a passion for science and really want to do something about it in terms of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so the way I like to think about it is that you shouldn't think about how to become an entrepreneur. That's not the goal. That's your goal. If you want to get into entrepreneurship, your goal is to find a problem and to solve that problem. And so, what you should be thinking about are the problems that you are extremely passionate about solving, the problems that affect you, the problems that affect the people you love, the problems that you see in the world that are affecting others that you have empathy for, and also think about the things that you are well suited to solve. So think about what your talents are and what talents you have the capacity to build, and then build your background learning about the problems that you can solve and experimenting with solutions and just failing early and often.
Yeah, wow, that's really insightful because like just finding a problem like you said that you're passionate about and I guess the solution will come with some time. It will be much easier. And so, what advice do you have for students about using their time, relationships, and opportunities to take advantage of their passions?
Sure, yes. So I think first bit of advice I'd give is, first of all, to find mentors. I think it's there's people out there who have done the things that you want to do and who are extremely excited about giving advice to younger people. So if you reach out to people on LinkedIn, for example, like what you did, and you ask people for advice, they will often give it to you. They'll often, take some time out of their day and have a conversation with you, and you can build that relationship and have sort of a more formal mentor-mentee relationship. And it's really helpful to have those adults in your life that are doing what you want to be doing and can help you along the way with connections and with guidance on how to think about your strategic plan for your life. So another place to find people is through conferences. In industries that you are interested in, you can often find really good student discounts to go to conferences, and you can go and talk to some people at different booths, and find people who are grabbing coffee, and it's a good place to meet up with industry professionals. You can reach out to those people on LinkedIn as well and say like, hey, maybe we should meet up at this conference. I'll be there. That's one route to that. But yeah, I think time, relationships, and opportunities. I think overall, just constantly be learning, constantly be finding problems that you want to solve and learning all you can about how you could potentially be solving them. And experimenting early and often. I think just trying stuff and not being worried if you fail, because failure is a necessary part of science and entrepreneurship, and the advantage that a startup has, and the advantage that someone experimenting in their basement has, is that failure doesn't cost that much. So the more you can fail early on, the better off you're going to be.
That's just amazing, the fact that just being able to connect, like you said, with others, being able to learn from others, and I learned from one of the previous episodes that the younger you are, the more the people are more willing to help you, right? Mm-hmm. And so before we conclude our interview, would you like to say a few last words, like what you really want our listeners to get out of this episode tonight?
Yeah, I'll harp on this. So I'll say it again. Climate change is the most important issue facing humanity right now, and there are so many little ways that you can do something to help with this. And I'd really recommend actually another podcast to check out called How to Save a Planet, which gives a really good overview of ways that you can, in your personal life, fairly easily take action against climate change. And so I hope that someone listening to that will check out that podcast as well, and see what ways you can help with this, because this is going to be a group effort to solve this problem.
Yeah, definitely. It is really it is really a big problem, and it's not going to happen with one or two people. It's going to happen with a lot of people. Like you said, it's a combined effort. So Paige, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today, learning about your experience from a high school student creating technology, and to studying at Stanford, as well as building your own startup with your team. It's been a really insightful experience and opportunity, and I hope we can speak again sometime. Thank you everyone for watching, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Have a good night.